Hi everyone, David Aragona here, taking a look at one of four stakes races taking place on Saturday at Monmouth Park. Race 10 is the Pegasus Stakes, going a mile and a 16th on the dirt for 3-year-olds. The local prep race for Monmouth's main summer event, the Grade 1 Haskell. We'll see if any of the 8 runners signed on for this Pegasus proved worthy of trying the likes of Fierceness and Muth in the Haskell. I think they all would need to take a step forward to do so, but we'll see how they handle this test on Saturday. And it's a pretty interesting group of runners. Some horses who contested Derby preps early in the season, most of them disappointing in those races. One of them actually coming out of the Kentucky Derby, Domestic Product, who actually won a Kentucky Derby prep, the Tampa Bay Derby, before finishing up the track in the Kentucky Derby. We'll see if he can rebound here. Haven't yet seen the morning line for this race. I would imagine Domestic Product is going to be the morning line favorite. Other horses who could attract support, like the number 1 Tuskin Sky for Todd Pletcher, the number 8 C Streak, the local New Jersey bred, is coming off an impressive victory in the Long Branch, but will be stepping up against a tougher field in this Pegasus. Let's take a look at the Time Form US pace projector before we dive into the main contenders. And interesting situation with this pace projector. The aforementioned number 8 C Streak does have tactical speed, but he seems content to stalk in many of his races, so I would imagine that he will be positioned outside of a horse like the number 1 Tuskin Sky. If that one breaks well, and Tuskin Sky did not break well last time in the Wood Memorial, which put him out of position right from the start, this horse does have the early speed to be forward in this race. We saw that when he debuted sprinting, but he's been a little bit unreliable. He's adding blinkers for this race, and that's one reason why he's shown a little bit more forward than he otherwise would be on the Time Form US pace projector. And what's most interesting about this pace projector is that horse shown on the early lead, the number 1 Tuskin Sky, also gets the LP flag, indicating that he is the highest Time Form US late pace rating in this field. The highest early pace rating, the highest late pace rating. If this horse runs his best race, I think he's going to be tough to run down. Just what can we expect from Tuskin Sky? And that's where we'll begin the conversation among the contenders. You can see in this horse's past performances, he won his first couple of starts pretty impressively. Both of them, though, over wet, sealed racetracks. A muddy track on debut at Aqueduct, and then a sloppy track second time out at Fairgrounds. Was he just some wet track specialist? Hard to really tell. He came into the Wood Memorial last time over a fast Harrow track and obviously did not show up with his best performance. Like I said, got a little bit steadied at the start, broke a half step slowly, was just out of position every step of the way, was motivated for most of that race by Manny Franco, but just did not respond to the encouragement and could never really get a rally going. Did have to swerve around that rival who clipped heels in mid-stretch there, but wasn't really going to ever get anything in that Wood Memorial. Since then, he was entered in the Sir Barton Stakes on the undercard of Preakness Day, was scratched out of that race. There was a wet track early in the day on Preakness Day, but it's hard to imagine the Tuscan Sky would have been scratched due to the wet track since he was 2 for 2 over such going. He missed a few workouts, you can see, from May 11th until June 1st. There's a gap in his workouts, now coming in off a couple of slow drills at Churchill, adding blinkers. It's just hard to know what to expect from this horse. And I looked up this stat in DRF Formulator for Todd Pletcher, adding blinkers in stakes races over the past 5 years. Not good statistics for Todd Pletcher, just 4 for 40, 10% win rate with a 75-cent ROI. So have some concerns that maybe Tuskin Sky is not going to be able to get back to his better efforts over wet tracks in this Pegasus. The number 2 is Just Step On It. He's going to be a long shot in this race. He is coming in from Parks for trainer Lewis Linder. Was not competitive in an optional claimer last time, a race that he should have been involved in the finish, just given some of his better prior form. He did earn a much faster speed figure at Parks going back to February in a 2-turn event where he actually finished ahead of Lonesome Boy, who would subsequently turn the tables on him in a stakes race next time, and Lonesome Boy did go on to finish a pretty good 4th in the Wood Memorial. Just doesn't feel like Just Step On Its form is heading in the right direction, so he would be a bit of a surprise in this Pegasus. The number 3 is Otello, another horse kind of like the rail runner Tuskin Sky, who started off his career in promising fashion, winning 2 in a row, took down the Mucho Macho Man Stakes early in the season at Gulfstream Park, sort of part of that road to the Florida Derby, although he was not able to stay on the Kentucky Derby trail, finished 6th in the Holy Bull, was out of position early in that race, not much pace going on, but could never really mount a rally. They tried synthetic last time at Turfway in the Jeff Ruby Stakes, and I understand trying the synthetic. This horse does have turf on the bottom of his pedigree. His dam Isabella Sings was a very good turf horse. Sometimes turf inclination translates to synthetic, but this horse didn't show up at all. He was out of horse about 6 furlongs into that race, just didn't really seem to handle the surface, didn't run his race that day. Now they're regrouping, going back to dirt off a bit of a layoff, seeing if he can get back on track. He still, though, even if he gets back to his better performances, is going to have to run faster to be competitive with some of the more fancied runners in this Pegasus. The number 4 is Willie Dees. We'll take a look at his most recent race at Delaware Park when he was an easy winner of an optional claiming race. Now, this was an off-the-turf affair, and he was sort of the obvious runner with dirt form coming into this race, so unsurprisingly was bet down to be the 7-5 favorite, and he just controlled every step of the way on the front end, really responding well to these more aggressive tactics. Actually, when you look back to his past performances, both career victories have come in front-running fashion. On debut, when he ran on the turf, led gate to wire, and then last time they went back to those front-running tactics and he responded well, earning a career best 107 time form US speed figure to win that race. Like I said, though, the competition wasn't that strong in terms of horses with dirt form coming into that race. And when he's faced more competitive pace scenarios in his prior starts at Oaklawn Park through the winter and spring, he just was not able to get anywhere near the early lead in this race. And there are some horses that appear to have a little bit more early speed than him, like Tuskin Sky, Sea Streak, maybe even a horse like Just Step On It. So I'm a little skeptical that Willie Dees is going to be able to pull that same kind of trip in this tougher race. The number 5 is Hades, who is another enigma in this race. Here is his best effort when he won the Holy Bull early in the season at Gulfstream Park, fending off eventual Florida Derby winner Fierceness, as well as Domestic Product, who was back in this race. Now, Hades did have everything go his way from a trip standpoint this day. He was able to set controlled, slow fractions up front, and then just sprint on home, not really letting any of the closers get into the race. He had shown quality before that, though, with that impressive allowance victory going 7 furlongs at Gulfstream. A 107 time form US speed figure would make him competitive in this race. The problem is Hades has really gone off form since then. Did not show up against Fierceness in that Florida Derby. Got a little shuffled back early in that race and just always seemed uncomfortable racing out of position. Did not fire a good shot that day. They brought him back in 2 weeks trying to get some last-ditch Kentucky Derby points. Didn't work out in that Lexington. Again, just not really getting the trip that he prefers, out of position early, wide around the far turn. And I think being wide was really a detriment on that April 13th card at Keeneland, because it felt like, especially in the dirt races and particularly in the dirt routes, you wanted to be on the rail forward, and he was just never able to get that kind of position. He was wide and too far back every step of the way. So I think that really exaggerated the margin of defeat for Hades. Now, like some others, he's had some time to regroup, coming off a bit of a layoff. It appears to be working well, racing out of his own stable at Monmouth this time. So we'll see if he can rebound. Hades did show quality early in the season. The number 6 is Uncle Heavy, and he's another horse coming out of a Triple Crown race like the one that we'll get to in just a second, the likely favorite Domestic Product. Uncle Heavy coming out of the Preakness Stakes last time, where he finished 6th, was never really a threat that day. That was a race that was controlled up front by Seize the Grey, who was setting legitimate fractions, but there wasn't a whole lot of running going on from the back of the pack in that Preakness, and the race flow just didn't really seem to work in Uncle Heavy's favor. 2 back in the Wood Memorial, he had the misfortune of drawing the far outside post position, breaking from post 12, was a little wide every step of the way and could never really get in the mix. Uncle Heavy did handle the distance of 2 turns on the dirt, 3 back in the Withers, where he overcame a potential rail bias to win that race by a nose. Not sure the Withers has proven to be the strongest race overall, looking back at who he beat that day. So he still does have to prove his class against some of these foes that he's facing here. And he's going to need a little bit of a pace setup since he's not a horse that possesses much early speed. The number 7 is Domestic Product, the other horse coming out of a Triple Crown race. He went off at 24-1 in the Kentucky Derby, finished 13th. We'll go back and take a look at his race that got him into the Kentucky Derby. This is the Tampa Bay Derby back in early March, where he was able to get the job done, rallying into a very slow pace. He was the best horse this day since they were just crawling up front, and he really produces this nice sprint finish between horses to just get up to win this race by a neck on the wire. Not the first time that he closed into a slow pace, as we saw him get up for second behind Hades in the Holy Bull in his start just prior to that. This is a horse who handles the two turns. He's run well on a number of occasions. He's lacking a little bit in the speed figure department, and that was one of the conversations around him heading into the Kentucky Derby, that he had closed well into these slow paces, gotten good late pace figures, but wasn't a horse that had run a fast final time number in any of his starts. I don't think it would have mattered in the Kentucky Derby. He just wasn't good enough. The trip didn't really work out for him. He got sandwiched between horses coming out of the starting gate, was out of position every step of the way, also got a rank under Irad Ortiz, and just seemed to run his race early in the early portions, fighting the rider, had nothing left for the finish. Getting rank is something the domestic product has had to deal with in a few prior starts, so you want to see him be able to settle better under Flavien Prat here, but he has drawn well outside, and if he gets back to one of his better efforts, I think you have to respect domestic product in this race. And then on the outside is the number 8 C Streak. He's coming off that local win in the Long Branch, where he was just way better than his competition on this day, drawing off to win by over 7 lengths. This overachieving New Jersey bred has really gotten good in recent starts. He had been beaten by the likes of Botello, Hades, and domestic product early in the season at Gulfstream Park, but he's since improved since coming back to Monmouth Park, where he began his career impressively last year. Actually, his 2 races at Monmouth are 2 of the highest speed figures he's earned, finishing second to Bookham Dano all the way back in his debut race last September as a 2-year-old, and he improved to earn a 110 Timeform US speed figure, getting back to Monmouth last time. A repeat of that number is going to make him awfully tough in here. He's got to stretch out a little bit further to get the mile in the 16th, and I am a little skeptical of how far this horse really wants to go, but a potential moderate pace would work in the favor of C Streak. Well, let's throw out my picks for this Pegasus, and I'm going to go back to Hades. I kind of promised myself after the Lexington that I was going to be done with this horse because I've been a fan of him and he's disappointed me twice in a row, but I like the fact that Joe Orsino has now given him a little bit of time between starts. He's getting to run out of his own stall at Monmouth, and I think he's going to be able to get better forward position in this Pegasus that doesn't feature a whole lot of pace than he was able to in either the Florida Derby or the Lexington. So I'm putting Hades on top, hoping that he is the right kind of price in here. I respect the local hope, C Streak, who did put in a performance that makes him competitive here last time. And while I'm not way against the number 7 domestic product, I view him as the horse to beat. I just think he could be an underlay in this race going out for connections like Chad Brown and Clarvich Stable. So the number 5 Hades for me in the Pegasus Stakes on Saturday at Monmouth Park. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.